Good afternoon, welcome to Medellin and the weekly rundown from InterBolsa for the week ending July the 31st. The coal caps had a up and down week, obviously driven by Venezuela. We started with some pretty rough days earlier in the week, but we've actually recovered and we're actually trading at new highs. Similarly with the peso, very weak earlier in the week, but now is recovering. Hasn't got below 2,000 again, but certainly better than it was. The benchmark 2020 bond is trading below 9%, which is pretty much the where you want it to be. Talking about the peso, the central bank last week had some very interesting comments. They basically didn't expect the peso to be this strong by this time this year, but they're going to do nothing about it. And they gave a pre-warning to exporters that, in short, there's plenty of instruments they can use to hedge themselves. They should have organised themselves by now, and the handouts they got last year are not going to happen again this year. So that's a fair warning for the exporters. Touching on Venezuela, obviously well documented across the world what's happening with Venezuela, be it US bases, anti-tank missiles, whatever you want to call it. We've had Chavez threatening to close the border, threatening to close down trade forever. Basically, it's very much the opinion here that's not practical in any way, shape or form from him, especially the food exports. You can't simply cut off food to people who already are short of food. So we'll see how that develops, and obviously the market will be driven by it next week as well. But we expect, once again, this will blow over probably sooner rather than later on this occasion. Coming to the Middle East is Gabriel Silva Lujan, the new defense minister. Moved over from the Coffee Federation. Good luck to him, and he picked a perfect time to start the job. And there's obviously big shoes to fill. Juan Manuel Santos was arguably the most successful defence minister in history, and that's a tough act to follow. On the macro side, not too much. We had June exports this morning down 25.3%, still driven by traditional cutbacks, which is basically oil exports to the US, which are obviously well down due to the price. The only other data was unemployment for June, which came in at 11.4%. That's not a bad figure because it was only 11.2% at the same time last year. Back in politics, domestically, not too much happening. Uribe actually, for the first time, spoke about the referendum. He says he's going to leave it to the Congress, Constitutional Court, the voters, that he'll just stand by and watch what's going on. But this week there's been really no progress whatsoever in the situation. In stocks, probably the stock of the week has been Argos. They reported good numbers for the second quarter. And then only last night they reported that they bought Holcim's participation in Haiti, Panama and the Dominican Republic for a total of $157 million. We're still waiting for some information on that. There's a conference call this afternoon, Friday, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you dial in, you can get more information. Obviously, we'll be on the call for you. Fabricato, we issued a report. We lowered our price target, but it's still a buy, basically because it has collapsed so far due to the Venezuelan situation. It's a buy, but it's a buy for the brave. There are inherent concerns about the peso, Venezuela itself, Ecuador to in an indirect extent. So Fabricato is a buy, but be careful with it. Suramericana reported numbers yesterday. They're up quarter on quarter, look fairly tidy. There's no real comparables because of the holding company. They did, though, announce that they've approved a $250 billion bond for issue, and that will come out subject to market conditions sometime later in the year, one presumes. CEO of Ecopetrol, Gutierrez, announced that 90% of the international bond issue of $1.5 billion went to foreigners. No real surprise, I guess. But again, that does mean $150 million was sucked up by the locals, who seem to have an incessant demand for corporate bonds. ESN, been a lot of speculation this week that there's trouble with the sale, that the investment bankers or shareholders or the government or certain people aren't happy. Zuloaga came out yesterday and basically said this sale will go through in 2009, which is not absolutely urgent, but the government would very much welcome that money towards this year's financing. Finally, CIB, the CEO indicated we may have another bond issue later in the year, again down to market conditions. Overall, InterBolsa, we put out a fairly hefty piece of research earlier in the week. We've changed our risk assessment again of the country. That entailed 13 upgrades and every price target was moved upwards. What we've looked at is the less tangible parts of the risk assessment in terms of, firstly, the inflows to emerging markets. Secondly, the fact that Colombia is investment friendly next to a lot of the neighbours. And thirdly, looking back at basically the developments we've seen in Colombia in terms of security, fiscal. So that was a lot of upgrades for us. Price targets all moved up. Finally, this week has been Colombia Moda. It's been very successful, $65 million already in pre-orders, 8,500 buyers here, 2,000 from overseas, sales were up 44% year on year. Columbia Motors leading into the opening of the Flower Festival here, which is a tremendous festival in Medellin, brings in a lot of tourists, and I will definitely be participating. So as of tomorrow, I'll be on the Cabalgata, which is the biggest horse parade in the world, which is already in the Guinness Book of Records, and you can expect to see 2 things on the Cabalgata. Well, 3. You'll see a lot of horses, you're going to see a lot of these, and you're going to see a lot of this, which is the local firewater. Very dubious, and doesn't taste good, but that'll be the weekend for me. And I hope wherever you are, you have a good weekend from Medellin.